Hey everyone! Today we're exploring another chilling and disturbing case. If you'd like to support the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stay engaged. It really means a lot. I truly appreciate it. Now, take a deep breath and let's dive in. Linda Howell kissed her daughter goodbye and drove off to buy cereal and milk. She never came back. For 14 years, her family searched, until a single anonymous email shattered everything they thought they knew about the man who led the prayers and possibly planned the murder. Linda Howell was a kind of mother who never missed a parent-teacher conference. She baked banana bread for church events and sang off-key in the car with her kids. She was married to Mark Howell, a respected pastor in Dayton, Ohio. Together, they had 3 children, a modest home owned by the church, and a seemingly perfect life. But behind closed doors, their marriage was disintegrating. Friends noticed Linda stopped wearing her wedding ring. Her sister recalled late-night calls where Linda confessed she was tired of pretending. On April 11, 2009, she left home at 11:17 a.m. to run a quick errand. She never came back. Police initially treated it as a missing persons case. Linda's minivan was found in a Walmart parking lot days later. Her purse was inside, car locked, keys gone. No struggle, no blood, no CCTV footage. Her husband, Mark, appeared devastated. He led televised prayer vigils. He quoted scripture. He cried beside their kids. The media called him the grieving shepherd. But the case soon went cold. Years passed. The Howell children grew up without their mother. Mark eventually transferred to a different church out of state. The community moved on, but one person didn't. In 2022, Detective Carla Jennings reopened the case during a routine audit of unsolved files. In the archives, she found an anonymous email from 2011 that had never been investigated. Dig under the basement. That holy man wears a mask. Jennings got curious. She began digging, figuratively at first. She looked into Mark Howell's finances. 3 months before Linda vanished, he took out a $500,000 life insurance policy on her. Odd timing. Even stranger, just 6 weeks after Linda disappeared, Mark was spotted on vacation in Florida with a young woman from his church, his secretary. At the time, he had told his congregation she was providing emotional support. Jennings brought in cadaver dogs to the Howell family's old home, now owned by another church employee. The dogs alerted under the basement crawl space, where the concrete had clearly been repoured. They dug, wrapped in a tarp, surrounded by decaying Bible pages and a rusted cross, were the skeletal remains of Linda Howell. Autopsy reports showed blunt force trauma to the skull, and signs she'd been bound by the wrists. Mark Howell was arrested during a sermon. Faced with overwhelming evidence, he confessed, claimed it was an accident during a heated argument, but police had enough to charge him with first-degree murder. The grieving pastor was now a killer in cuffs. Just as the family thought they finally had closure, Jennings discovered one more thing during a digital sweep of Mark's cloud storage. A folder marked confession_2, password protected, hidden, never accessed publicly. Inside, a recorded video diary addresses someone named Rebecca, a name none of Mark's family recognized. Who was Rebecca, and what other secrets was Pastor Mark hiding? Linda Howell wasn't the only secret Mark was keeping. When detectives cracked open the second confession, they uncovered another woman, another lie, and possibly another victim. The file was time-stamped 4 months before Linda's disappearance. In it, Mark stares directly into the camera. He's not wearing his collar. He looks agitated, sweaty, pacing. He says, "If anything happens to me, I want you, Rebecca, to know that I never stopped loving you. But I can't keep living 2 lives. Linda knows something. I think she's watching me. I don't know what I'm going to do." Detectives identified Rebecca Mallory, a woman who had attended the church for a short time in 2008. She was 29 then, a recent divorcee, quiet, artistic, and in July 2009, just 3 months after Linda vanished, Rebecca moved away abruptly and cut off all ties. She was never seen again. Jennings tracked down Rebecca's last known address, a small apartment in Toledo, Ohio. Landlord said she broke lease with no explanation and left in the middle of the night. Her deposit was never collected. A neighbor remembered a tall man visiting her late at night. When shown a photo of Mark Howell, the neighbor froze. That's him, the preacher guy, but he always wore a baseball cap pulled low. Detectives searched Rebecca's social media. Dead since 2009, but a photo stood out. It was a picture of a hand holding a necklace, the same silver cross necklace found wrapped around Linda Howell's remains. Mark was confronted with the file and the necklace. He stayed silent for 4 minutes, then whispered, "I was trying to save her soul, but she wouldn't let me go." He then gave a chilling confession. He met Rebecca during counseling. They started an affair. He promised he'd leave Linda, but when Rebecca threatened to go public with the relationship if he didn't follow through, Linda wasn't the only one who had to disappear. Rebecca's body has never been found, but a journal discovered in the pastor's home mentions Lake Jeremiah. She wanted to paint it one last time. I told her it would be our secret place, a holy place, a resting place. Divers were sent to Lake Jeremiah, a small, secluded body of water behind the church retreat center. At 14 feet deep, partially buried in the mud, search teams recovered a sealed barrel. Inside, human remains, a painting kit, and a woman's leather diary marked RM. Dental records confirmed Rebecca Mallory. As prosecutors built a second murder case against Mark Howell, another bombshell dropped. During the evidence review, Jennings discovered encrypted notes in the church financial records. One line stood out: Project Daughters of Lot. Total, $45,000. What was Project Daughters of Lot? And why were there 3 other women's names listed under the same column? This wasn't about love. This wasn't about lust. This was about control. And Mark Howell had a system for it. Detective Carla Jennings brought in cybercrime analysts to decode the files hidden in the church's encrypted financial archives. Buried in an off-the-books Excel file were 4 names: Linda Howell, Rebecca Mallory, Alyssa Green, Naomi Childs, Sarah Monroe. Next to each name was a transaction record, all tied to church funds labeled Mission Outreach. But these weren't missions. They were payouts. $15,000 here, $18,500 there, all withdrawn as cash. All before the women were reported missing or relocated. Alyssa Green, a choir member and single mother, reported missing in 2006. Her case went nowhere. She had been rumored to have had private counseling sessions with Pastor Howell. Her last known location? A church retreat in Kentucky, the same place where Mark often cleared his head. Naomi Childs, a 21-year-old intern who moved from Louisiana to work for the church in 2007, quit abruptly, no forwarding address. Her roommate claimed Naomi cried often, saying, "He promised I'd be chosen." Sarah Monroe, a recovering addict who found salvation through Mark's prison outreach program. She vanished after allegedly accusing Mark of inappropriate spiritual discipline in a group chat that was later deleted. Each woman was young, vulnerable, deeply tied to the church, and all had received private mentorship from Pastor Howell. In his journals, Mark referred to them as Lot's daughters, a disturbing biblical reference where daughters are seduced under spiritual pretense. Jennings was horrified. This wasn't random. This was ritualistic, predatory, planned. Church elders denied knowledge. But one whistleblower, a former treasurer named Marvin Peters, confessed. "We knew something was off. The money was going missing, and Mark said it was for private healing retreats. He called them his deliverance girls. Said God gave him that burden. But when we asked questions, we were told not to interfere with the anointed." One elder even admitted that the church destroyed therapy intake records to protect Pastor Mark's privacy. Linda's eldest daughter, 24-year-old Rachel Howell, broke down in court during a victim impact statement. "My dad used scripture to bury the truth. He didn't just kill our mom. He killed faith. For every person who trusted him, for every woman who walked into that church looking for healing and met him instead." A sealed envelope was submitted into evidence by Mark's own brother, Caleb Howell. Inside was a handwritten letter, dated December 2008, a year before Linda's death. It reads, "I've done something terrible. I can't stop. I keep dreaming of fire and salt. If this letter is open, I'm already past redemption." At the bottom, the signature, MH, and a Bible verse, Luke 17, verse 32. Remember Lot's wife. But here's the thing. Caleb claims he found the letter in his own attic, inside a box labeled camp photos. And he never opened it until now. The letter, written in Mark Howell's distinct slanted script, was dated 4 months before Linda disappeared. He wrote, "I am no longer in control. The urges come like thunder in my chest. They cry for obedience. Rebecca knows too much. Linda suspects everything. And the others, their faith is not strong enough to hold the secret. But I am the shepherd. I must protect the flock, even from itself." Detective Carla Jennings stared at the line that came next. "I buried the first fire. No one found it, but it still smolders beneath the old camp floorboards. That's where it started, where it must end." This line sent Jennings and her team to the church's original youth camp, long closed after a mysterious fire in 2005, which was officially blamed on faulty wiring. But now, they had reason to believe otherwise. At the site of the burned-out chapel, dogs once again alerted. Under layers of ash and timber, a metal chest was recovered, blackened but intact. Inside, charred Bible pages, a burnt scarf, a melted locket with the initials AG, Alyssa Green, and a flash drive, somehow protected in a fireproof sleeve. The drive contained only one video, a shaky, handheld recording of a confession booth, not from a church, but from a converted storage unit. In the dimly lit video, Mark Howell is seen guiding a woman, face blurred, through what he calls a purification ritual. His voice is calm, preacher-like. Hers is trembling. "Mark, you must burn what binds you. That's what Scripture says. You've carried shame. Now you must give it to God through flame." She holds a scarf, the same one found in the chest. Seconds later, the screen goes dark. Police believe this is the last recorded moment of Alyssa Green, who went missing in 2006. FBI cult investigators were brought in after the discovery. According to their findings, Mark's behavior matched several patterns seen in microcults, isolated authority figures within mainstream religious institutions who use spiritual influence to manipulate, isolate, and abuse. Mark referred to the women as daughters of Lot. But the FBI's behavioral analyst believed he viewed himself not as Lot, but as God in the story. He wasn't saving them. He was testing them. And if they failed his test, he became their executioner. Detective Jennings couldn't shake the verse Mark scribbled at the end of his letter. Luke 17, verse 32. Remember Lot's wife. Biblically, Lot's wife was turned to salt for looking back at sin. But what if Mark wasn't referencing a story, but a person? A forgotten file confirmed the suspicion. In 2004, a woman named Elizabeth Lott, note the spelling, filed a police report against Mark Howell for inappropriate conduct during counseling. The report was dropped. She left town, disappeared. Her name never appeared in the church archives again. Until now, Detective Jennings tracked down Elizabeth Lott's last known address, a rural farmhouse outside Dayton. She'd been living off the grid for over a decade. When investigators arrived, a woman in her early 50s met them at the door. She looked them in the eye and said, "I knew you'd come. I have something you need to see. But first, tell me, how many bodies did they find?" For 2 decades, she lived in silence, off the grid, in hiding, because she knew the truth about the man behind the pulpit and what happened inside the confession room, the place where salvation ended and death began. Elizabeth Lott hadn't used her real name in 17 years. Living under an alias, she farmed goats, sold soap at rural markets, and refused all forms of digital communication. But when Detective Carla Jennings showed up with a Bible verse and a photo of Pastor Mark Howell in cuffs, she didn't cry. She exhaled. "I knew someone would find me. He told me if I ever spoke, I'd be turned to salt." I believed him. Elizabeth had been in recovery, newly sober, fragile, but hopeful. Her parole officer referred her to New Dawn Ministries, where Pastor Mark ran a reentry program for women seeking spiritual rehabilitation. He told her God had chosen her, that her past was part of her holy test. She believed it, until the therapy sessions grew dark. She describes being taken into a locked room at the back of the church. No windows, soundproofed. Inside was a wooden chair, a single bulb, a camera on a tripod. He called it the confession room. He told me the only way to be saved was to give him everything. My sins, my secrets, my shame, and my body. One night, during a supposed overnight prayer fast, Elizabeth says she fought back when he tried to bind her wrists. I scratched his face and ran barefoot through the woods. I didn't stop until I collapsed behind a gas station 6 miles away. She filed a police report, but Mark claimed she was delusional, possibly relapsing. The church backed him, and without hard evidence, the case was closed. She fled town and disappeared. Elizabeth described the exact dimensions of the confession room. She remembered the creak in the third floorboard, the emblem carved into the wood. Jennings brought in a forensic team to the now-defunct New Dawn Ministries chapel. Behind a sealed closet door, the room was still there. Same emblem carved into the floor, soundproof padding, restraint hooks, and in a locked compartment behind the wall paneling, 21 mini DV tapes, labeled with women's initials and dates. So far, 6 women have been identified from the tapes, some still missing, others confirmed deceased. The tapes show Howell conducting ritual cleansings, coercing confessions, and reciting scripture while physically and psychologically tormenting his victims. It was a performance, one he rehearsed, perfected, and filmed. Prosecutors now believe these tapes were trophies, evidence of control. The church has released a statement calling the revelations heartbreaking and demonic, but survivors like Elizabeth call it something else. Predictable. We screamed, they prayed, and they left us in the fire. A class action lawsuit has been filed against the church, several elders, and the church's insurance providers for cover-up, negligence, and obstruction of justice. Just when the case seemed to be reaching its conclusion, Jennings received one final letter, mailed anonymously, no return address. Inside was a photo of Mark Howell as a young seminary student in 1993, smiling next to another pastor. The caption on the back read, "He wasn't the first, he was a favorite." And below that, a Bible verse again, Jeremiah 5, verse 31. "The prophets prophesy falsely, and my people love to have it so." The photo showed a young Mark Howell, no older than 22, standing next to a man named Pastor Franklin Dale, founder of the now-defunct New Light Ministries. Franklin was a charismatic megachurch leader known in the 80s for revival tours and a growing inner circle of male protégés. Mark Howell was one of them. In 1993, Dale was quietly removed from leadership for moral failings. No charges, no explanation. The elders said only this: Brother Dale has stepped down for spiritual restoration. Detective Carla Jennings tracked down an archived local news segment buried on microfilm. One line in the footage stuck out. Allegations of inappropriate counseling practices have surfaced at New Light Ministries, though no charges were filed. Sound familiar? Jennings discovered that 4 women had filed reports against Franklin Dale between 1989 and 1994, all between the ages of 18 and 26. All described confession-based rituals involving touch, restraint, and forced silence, soundproof rooms, spiritual tests, hidden tapes. But back then, no media attention. No survivors came forward publicly. The cases were quietly dropped. When Dale died in 2003 of a stroke, no investigation followed. And Mark Howell? He founded New Dawn Ministries just 1 year later. Experts now believe Mark didn't just model his abuse on Dale, he expanded it. Where Dale used confession and shame, Mark added ritualistic language, life insurance policies, and long-term manipulation. He perfected the weaponization of Scripture. He didn't just inherit the pulpit, he inherited a blueprint. And worse, he passed it on. Authorities discovered that Mark had mentored at least 7 young men in his inner circle, 4 of whom are now active pastors in other states. Two have already been placed on administrative leave after former church members came forward with similar allegations: locked prayer sessions, deliverance fasting in isolation, emotional control through guilt and public humiliation. One even had a confession room replica. This wasn't one man's sickness. It was a generational infection, hidden in pulpits, protected by silence. The final courtroom session was held in Dayton. The names of the confirmed victims were read aloud in a packed courtroom. Linda Howell, Rebecca Mallory, Alyssa Green, Naomi Childs, Sarah Monroe. A sixth name was added: Elizabeth Lott, the survivor who lived to expose the truth. And there may still be more. As Mark Howell was sentenced to life without parole, he made no statement. His children sat in the front row. They did not look at him. After the hearing, Rachel Howell, now 25, gave one final press statement: "My father buried my mother, then buried the truth for 14 years. But truth doesn't rot like bodies do. It waits, and eventually it rises." In the end, it wasn't one mistake, one affair, or one murder. It was a system, a structure built from twisted scripture, silence, and misplaced trust. It took decades to crumble, but one brave survivor lit the match. Mark Howell is currently serving life in federal prison with no chance of parole. A national task force on religious abuse and institutional silence was launched in the aftermath of the case. Elizabeth Lott now leads support groups for survivors of spiritual abuse. Project Daughters of Lot is being investigated as a multi-state case. At least 3 more church leaders have been placed under review for similar misconduct. What are your thoughts on this case? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated with more stories, where each case isn't just about crime, but also offers a lesson for life.